Veritas Files here. I just wanted to pick up where I left off. I was talking about StormCloudsGathering and his second, be talking about his second video on silver. He kind of picked up where he left off, which basically saying that silver and gold are not going to sustain you over the long term in a collapse. And he talked about the collapse being between 5 and 20 years. Now I think that's probably a reasonable amount of time. The details, again, cannot really be known. But this is something that I mentioned before, but he seems to be addressing people that don't really exist, or the people that I don't know. I know a lot of people that invest in silver. I don't know anybody who is going to, or is thinking about using their silver to sustain them through the entire collapse, as if in the way that he seems to be describing, like I'm going to live my normal American lifestyle after collapse because I have this. Really? I don't know anybody that thinks that way. I know I'm not going to. I've even done a video a long time ago. When your neighbors start losing weight, you better start losing weight. Because if you don't, that's the same as painting yourself with a target, okay? This stuff is to be used in a very strategic way. Unless you just have no other options. If you're elderly or you're sick, again, and this is your only option, your only viable avenue of survival, okay, an acceptance for that. But still, for the average person who's able-bodied in any sense and has any sense, they're not going to be using it in the way that you seem to think they will. And I don't even know why you would think that. I mean, it doesn't make any sense to me. I mean, if I didn't have any food or anything at home to eat, would I use this? Absolutely. If I got sick and I needed antibiotics, would I use this? Absolutely. Am I going to be using this to watch the Super Bowl or to buy, a new car? I don't think so. I mean, that's crazy. Now, those things may not even be available, but they're probably not going to be relevant factors in my life by and large during a collapse scenario. I'm going to use as little of this as I have to. Will it last me 20 years? I doubt it. It might, but I doubt it, But it's not designed for me to, live my American lifestyle post-collapse. This is designed so that I can drop in some wealth here and there when I need it, okay? In a way that where you don't actually have that option. If you don't do this, you don't have that option. If for whatever reason, think about the possible scenarios that could take place. Let's say you get an infection and you actually need modern medicine. But the only way you can get modern medicine is if you actually pay for it, because there are very few functioning hospitals, right? So you have to travel somewhere away from your location in order to go to a functioning hospital, and then you have to pay, and you have to pay serious coin in one way or another. You've got to pay. You've got to offer them something that is a store of wealth. Now, yes, is it possible that you'll bring them buckets and buckets of green beans or whatever? Corn, whatever it might be. Is it possible? Yes, it's possible. But let's say that happens and you've had a drought, so your harvest is not very good, and there's barely enough to feed your family. What are you going to do? What are you going to do? When you narrow your strategy to I'm doing this and nothing else, essentially, I think you make a mistake. And when you accuse others of doing that same thing, I'm doing this and nothing else, I think you make a mistake. I don't know very many people who are doing this who aren't doing anything else. In fact, like I said before, I don't know anyone who's doing that. Some of the most ecstatic people with regard to the rise of silver that are on YouTube, they do videos routinely in a chicken coop. I kid you not. And every time I think about, the people he's complaining about, I often think of Silver Futurist. If you guys haven't watched him, you should watch some of his videos. He's kind of crazy, but he's funny, and he does have some valuable information. But the guy's doing yoga poses in a chicken coop while he talks about silver. I mean, it's not as though people that do this aren't doing anything else. Now, yes, are they not doing homesteading to the exclusion of it? Yes, they're not doing what you're doing, right? They haven't chosen to put all of their life savings into a single avenue, into a single basket, right? But that doesn't mean that they're wrong. I don't think you're wrong, except in the idea that you are very narrow in your approach, probably because you're a little overconfident about the details of the future rather than the broad outlines. But having said that, let me move on. You've always recommended that people get land, and I think that's a good recommendation. I think that is, again, one tool, and that is a major tool. I would argue that having something that you own in terms of land that you can grow food on is a primary investment strategy. That is a primary survival tool. I would say more important than silver, in my opinion. Not a lot more important, but more important than silver. Because you can do so much with that. It is so fundamental. But if you don't do this at the same time, your ability to adapt to circumstances that are out of your control and you cannot see ahead of time is diminished significantly. It is always a good idea to have a compact, easily concealable, easily transportable store of wealth. That is never a bad idea. Now, there are various forms of that, but I would argue that something like this is a lot safer in most cases than guns and ammunition and even food and water. Those things can all store value, but they are generally for limited periods of time because they do things like spoil. They do things like scare whatever law enforcement or governments might be around, such as guns and things like that. And they're not always useful to people. I mean, if you have a bunch of 9mm ammunition and everybody's wanting shotgun shells or 30-06, you're not gonna do very well, right? So all of those things can be used, and those things should all be purchased, right? But not to the exclusion of everything else. There's so many important things that one can do. Homesteading is one of them. Land is one of them. Guns are one of them. Food stores are one of them. Silver, gold, and copper, those are just another tool. They're one of them, metal investment. Anyway, so I don't disagree with your recommendation entirely. I just disagree with the way that you give the recommendation, which is, I think, somewhat short-sighted. Well, I'm being kind, but let me move on. You basically said whenever somebody gets angry because you're sharing your opinion about the value of metals, you think it ceases to be an investment strategy, which I would call a survival strategy, and you think it becomes a religion. Maybe. I mean, maybe there are people out there that really do, in a practical way, worship money or wealth. Maybe. By this I mean they actually sit down with their physical metals and they sing some kind of a song and bow and perform all kinds of ceremonies with it and whatnot. Maybe there's people like that. I don't really think that that's a serious comment. If that's the case, then you're guilty of worshiping homesteading, I guess, because you're getting upset with people who celebrate the rise of silver or the fact that silver is turning out to be a good investment by ascribing the worst possible motives to them. And I don't really think that you're a homestead worshiper. I just think that's the kind of comment you just made about the person who invests in silver, and it's a little silly. To put it bluntly, it's just not the case. if someone gets really upset and they take it very personally, it's probably because of the way you're presenting it or the way you're misrepresenting it. And I've talked about that already. The economic collapse will not be short term. I agree, and yes, I agree. It's not gonna. Silver is not going to, generally speaking, is not going to last a person for 20 years. But again, like I said before, probably very few people are planning on exclusively relying on silver for a period of 20 years. I can't imagine someone doing that. But maybe you're right. Maybe there's hordes of those people out there. I have no idea. What will enable you to thrive in a third world country? Well, there's a lot of things that would enable you to thrive in a third world country. And believe it or not, I know something about that. One of those things would be easily concealable, easily transportable stores of wealth. Are you correct in that it's dangerous to have that kind of stuff in a third world country? Yes, it is. But again, and I'm just gonna put this bluntly, not because I'm trying to be, not because I'm really upset. I'm frustrated because I'm astonished that you put things in the way that you do. You're a super smart guy, a lot smarter than me. Yet you put things in ways when you disagree with someone that doesn't make a lot of sense to me. Who in the world would walk around with their pockets filled with silver or gold in a third world country? Okay? Nobody. If I'm going out and I'm going to buy bread, I'm going to take this with me, and that's probably all I'll have on me other than a gun or knife or something to protect myself. And it probably won't just be ringing around in my pocket. It's probably going to be wrapped up in some cloth, right? And it's going to be a dirty piece of cloth, and I'm going to look horrible. I'm not going to look like I'm living high on the hog. Anybody who's thought anything about this, which most people who are buying this for the purpose of collapse have thought about this fairly significantly, and they are not going to show up and throw a bunch of gold out on the table and say, give me this and that, give me this and that, and then walk out like nothing's going to happen. That's just not reasonable. Is it okay to advise people against that, make sure that they know, kind of remind people to keep a low profile if you're going to use this stuff? Absolutely. Common sense, right? Remind them. But don't assume that everybody's an idiot and that they're going to walk around with bags full of this stuff and, it's just going to be sitting out in the house. When you walk in, everybody's going to see silver and gold everywhere. I mean, that's just not, nobody's going to do that. You wouldn't even be able to find it in my house. Apart from, there's one, well, there will be more, but there's one essentially little piggy bank that I keep stuff in that specifically is for people to steal. That stuff I'm willing to get rid of. And yes, there's silver in it, there's gold in it, there's copper in it, and they can have it. They can have it. Because if they want to rob my house, they're going to find something and they're going to get out of there, right? And they're going to think they've taken everything I own, all of my wealth, but they will not. Okay. Man. There's other things I could respond to, but I think I've said everything. He made some kind of analogy or example out of having silver and being a miner, which I really don't think applies. The miner is producing silver or whatever he's producing by going down into a mine. If you have a stock of silver, that is your mine, okay? So you are producing, in a sense. You're putting something on the open market that was not on the open market. Now, whether your mine is going to last 100 years like the other guys will, I doubt it, right? Maybe it's a smaller mine, but it's still you're still doing the same thing the miner's doing. It's just that you did it ahead of time by leveraging the high value of the dollar. The miner never had that opportunity, apparently. He didn't do what was wise.